This is the Floridaville. Get to know the people behind the Florida names you know. I'm your host, Rosanna Catalano. On this episode, we get to know Christine Phipps, the CEO of Phipps Reporting. In the last decade, Christine has opened 10 offices, acquired 13 companies, and is considered one of the fastest growing companies in America. On top of all this, she currently serves as the president of the National Court Reporters Association. We are recording remotely today. I'm in my home in Tallahassee, and Christine is speaking to us from her home in Palm Beach. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rosanna. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You have such an interesting life story. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me where you were born and raised.
Well, I was born in Miami, Florida, second generation native to Miami, Florida. But I grew up in Broward County in the Fort Lauderdale area. And then I migrated. I'm in Palm Beach now for the last 15 years. So I'm South Florida.
So you've just edged up north as
edged.
as
Each county was a very big move.
What was your home life like?
Well, it was the 70s. It was the best of times. Well, I grew up, my grandmother owned a family restaurant. And so from the age of 10, I started working in it. And my mother never had her own career. And, you could get a whole domestic violence and things like that were so different back then. And, it was very hard to get out of abusive relationships, especially when you don't have your own career. It's very much what inspired me to be always self-sufficient and to make sure that I could always make my own way so that I would never be under anyone's thumb like that, like she was. And but my mom is doing okay now. It was, of course, very tumultuous growing up. It was tough. And I've been on my own since I was 16. I put myself through my last year of high school, living on my own, staying with friends and things like that. I forged my mom's signature at the last year of high school, managed to graduate, went to school every day, and off I went.
So tell us where you started your career.
Well, my first job was at a bank. I got it through a temp agency and started out as a teller. And I worked there for 7 years, and it was really a great experience. They promoted education. So I got, banking education while I was there. And I climbed up the ladder, actually, believe it or not. I became a corporate officer of the bank by the time I was 21 years old. And so I opened and closed the bank every day and was responsible for a lot of employees. So I think back now, 21 years old, as I have employees that are, that young, and you think 21, I mean, you're just a child. But I don't know. I always felt, I guess having grown up like I did, I think I always felt like I was 10 or 15 years ahead of where I actually was. But I worked for a small savings and loan. Back then, there were savings and loans and there was commercial banks, and it was privately owned. They had 7 branches in the South Florida area. They had one up in Sebring, and they really ran it. Really, I mean, it was family owned. The owner was very unassuming. There's a lot to learn from that. Took great care of employees. People had been there for a really, really long time. But eventually, I was there about 5 or 6 years, and a head teller had embezzled money. It was just when America's Most Wanted had first started, that TV show. And she was featured. They were looking for her. She had absconded to Jamaica. I don't think she was ever found. She had stolen like $250,000, which is a lot of money back in the early 1990s. But people lost their jobs because of that. And it just made me realize, being in control, somebody being in control of me, and, that somebody else would steal and affect my life. And I understand they were responsible. But I decided to go back to school for court reporting. It wasn't only that incident. It was also that I was a very hard worker. And everybody was promoted through tenure only. You weren't really promoted through, the work that you did. Even though I was obviously had a good position for as young as I was, there was people that had been there for so long, it was going to take me forever. I may have never really gotten any further. And despite my position, I was balancing my checkbook down to the last $10. At this time, I already have a child, and I just couldn't see living life like that forever. And so I went back to court reporting school, and I went with the attitude that, if it takes me 10 years to finish, then in 10 years, I will still be making more money by the time I finish court reporting school than I would if I stay on this path. And so that's what I set out to do. And of course, it didn't take me 10 years. I finished it in 2 years, had another child while I was in college, and got out and started working in court reporting. So, which is the best decision I ever did. I love what I do.
Where did you go to school for court reporting?
I went to Broward State College, so I actually do have a degree in court reporting. Court reporting varies. You don't have to have a degree. There's some people that do have a bachelor's degree. I have an associate's degree, which I'm really glad and proud that I did, receive that degree. But yeah, I went to Broward. It was Broward Community College back then, but it's a state college now.
So, where did you work once you graduated from Broward with your court reporting?
I worked for a small firm down in Miami. They just did criminal work. I didn't know types of cases, one from another. Actually, there's something in our industry, a nuance where you're paid on the line, which means that you get paid by the firm, whether they're paid or not. And so I didn't realize how slow paying bills could be in the court reporting side. So I literally was driving down to Miami every day. I had two small kids. I was not making much money at all in court reporting. I almost resigned myself to flipping burgers. But luckily I had another friend I went to college with who was with a great firm in Broward County who had the court system in some of the jurisdictions throughout the state is given to a freelance firm, and that firm supplies all of the court reporters for that particular judicial district. So for the 17th judicial, I was one of the official court reporters then, and I stayed in that position for a couple of years until I left that, and they brought me out to start freelancing. And freelancing means that you go and cover depositions. You may go and cover court, but on the civil side and throughout Florida, the court reporters are hired independently. There's no officials on the civil side of litigation. So that was basically where I started. It was a great start. The very first firm, she did me a real justice. She proofread my transcript, red penned them for 4 months. It really gave me a great foundation for becoming a great court reporter. And then the next one, when I went to Broward County, that firm, Merit Reporting, the owners were really great. They read your notes, they cared about the quality. And that's when I started to learn about different firms and reputations and, starting to make my way of what I was going to assimilate my name with and what I wanted to become. And funny enough, I was talking to one of the firms that I acquired today. I acquired them a few years ago, but I happen to be talking to the former owner who works with me still. But he was one of the most prestigious firms. It was Taylor Jonovic down in Miami, and they actually reported the original Engle tobacco trial, and which went on for years. Unprecedented trial of Florida for sure. And, and to think that he's part of my firm now, and how far things have come. But his firm had that reputation that I wanted to become when I built my company. So
That's amazing.
It's great having these people part of us now.
So for those of us in the audience that are unfamiliar with court reporting, can you describe for them what court reporters do and why it is so important that they are correct and accurate?
So I'm a stenographer. There are three different types of court reporting. There's stenography, there's voice writing, and then there are some where they go in and electronically record. Electronic recording, there's a plethora of information about how bad that is. Voice writing is not very popular here. I only know of about a half a dozen. Some states it's very popular, like North Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas. Here, it's primarily all stenographic, and stenographic is the gold standard for creating the record. So basically, I have a little machine and it has 22 keys on it, and I form syllables as I write. So almost the whole alphabet's in this hand and almost the whole alphabet's in this hand, and the vowels are at the bottom. And I write cat and dog and Christine. Every stroke of the hand is a syllable of a word. But, I call it, we're quasi judicial officers of the court system. We work in tandem, with judges and lawyers. And I call it like the fabric of the judicial system. I'm the one that's making the record, capturing every single word. And there's just no room for any error, meaning, one slip of a can or can't, and not appreciating that apostrophe T and something that is said very quickly, or when people talk over each other and making sure that you interrupt to make sure that you got the correct word. Literally, somebody's life hangs in the balance. It could be the difference. That one word could be the difference between somebody getting life or death. It could be a mother losing her children. It could be, cost a company hundreds of millions of dollars, for some egregious error that they're accused of doing. So, court reporters, stenographers, we take it very seriously. We go through years of training. I got through in 2 years. I probably a little bit more on the gifted side of getting through court reporting school that quickly, considering that I had a child along the way as well. But I have friends of mine that have spent 7 years in school, because it's a skill that you obtain. It's not like becoming an engineer, and I get to become an engineer even though I passed a couple of those classes with a C-. This, you have to obtain a skill, and you have to be able to write it at a minimum of 225 words per minute at 95% accuracy. And meaning, when I say 95% accuracy, not having a comma in when you write counts, because there's a big difference sometimes in just 4 words in a sentence. You throw a comma in there and it completely changes the meaning of something. So it's all very important, punctuation included. So it's, we take it very seriously because we work very hard to achieve certifications and, learn to be able to do that. And we feel just a deep responsibility to the record. And so when you have things like electronic recording going on out there, those things are just so, you've got somebody who's not really been trained, but maybe a week or two, and they're out recording, and God knows, when people talk over each other, things get heated. Witnesses purposely speak under their breath, doors slamming, bad audio in the room. And then to not know that didn't come out until after, it's like you really only get one bite of that apple. And to recreate it, to go and do it over again, nothing ever comes out the same. So it's a big responsibility.
I have always been impressed with how quickly court reporters work in the courtroom, or when I've done depositions, and how incredibly accurate the record has been. And now you've given me a new appreciation for the pauses. I didn't realize that they were, I've read it, but I just never accounted for the comma and the pause. But you're right. That is something just as important. So I'm even more impressed thinking back to all the transcripts that I've read. So let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you how you created your business.
Okay, great.
At Rocket Ship Consultants, our mission is to take your organization to the next level. Our team develops strategic communication plans that help entrepreneurs, corporations, associations, and individuals reach new heights. Our consulting team is made up of attorneys with additional experience in journalism, public relations, politics, broadcasting, and advocacy. Let us help you take that dream you have for a podcast or video show and make it into a reality. We can create networking opportunities, educational forums, and interactive conferences to spread your message. Let our team provide you with fresh ideas and inspiration. Rocket Ship Consultants offers a variety of services, so check out our website at rocketshipconsultants.com. Take off with Rocket Ship Consultants and launch your organization with us. Welcome back. My guest today is businesswoman Christine Phipps, who is the CEO of Phipps Reporting, one of the fastest growing companies in the country. You have been working as a freelance court reporter for several years. You had been. So what prompted you to start your own business, Christine?
You know, when I was in college, I really wanted to have my own business. I said with me and my girlfriend, we were going to start our own business one day and we were going to be partners. And she moved to California, so that didn't happen. And then I kind of put that dream aside. And then what happened was I was becoming a very popular court reporter. I had lots and lots of clients. I just had cultivated a lot of relationships. And so I had quite a book of business. And when I first started out, there was mom and pop type court reporting agencies. That's really all that existed. And then around the late 1990s came in big corporations into the court reporting space. And so I was working with one of the big corporations, and I just found it very frustrating moving through the red tape of the big corporations. I had my own book of business. I built it on my own reputation, and I wanted my clients to be serviced in a very particular way. And so I was starting to have conflicts with management. And, that's a really good sign that, it's time, because I wanted to run things my own way. And, that doesn't really work so much in the corporate environment. So I then decided to open up my own business. People were actually approaching me, other businesses from out of state, and asking me to go into business, trying to fund me to put me into business. But I kept walking away from those deals ultimately because, it was part of it was the funding, the startup, and how much do you need in order to start a business. But I kept hearing, like one deal, I remember they said something like, just remember banker controls. And that just really clicked for me because I was like, oh, okay. There's probably going to be some diminution of value at some point, or, that means that I could lose control of all this. No, that's not going to happen. And then partnerships are, being in litigation all these years, partnerships are, I just kind of know better. So, I already had 2 marriages that didn't work out. I wasn't likely a partnership in business, which is probably even more serious, is going to work out either. So, ultimately, I saved and saved and saved, and I ended up funding the business myself. And luckily, I had enough. I didn't take a salary. I didn't take any income for 8 months. So I had saved enough to live. And while I used the money to start up the initial capital, plus pay people that I needed, because I needed an employee pretty much right off the bat, and pay for some other things, and get the equipment that I needed, and it all worked out.
What advice would you give to people who want to start a business but don't know where to start?
Well, the first thing I would say is kind of just what I was talking about: cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. If nothing else. So when I started out, while I had a book of business on my own as a freelance court reporter that was valued at 1.5 million. So that wasn't to say that when I opened my own business that all those people were going to, definitely stick with me, right? Because I still had, I had a proof of concept that I was going to be able to service them in all those ways as a startup. But I started in my house. My son was away at college. The copier was downstairs in the laundry room. I had an employee upstairs in his bedroom, and we roughed it for the first 6 months doing business that way. And because I did not want to invest in things, including an office space, until my concept was proving itself out. But that has remained at the forefront to this day. So I have remained self-funded. I don't have any loans, never borrowed any money. Not that I don't have, I do have banking relationships and they're prepared to fund me at any time, because that's also very important as you get going. But it is also what saved me during the pandemic, is because I believe in saving for a rainy day, so to speak. I'm still that court reporter who was saving just to fund the business in the first place. But cash flow is imperative, and understanding that because you cannot run things, where you're balancing down to that last $10, like I did when I was, in the banking career. So understanding cash flow is just imperative. Outside of that, a very successful lawyer, he's a chair at the Gunster firm. He took me to dinner and he gave me a book called Peter's Principle. And he talked about, he represented like very large banks. Like and this was right after we were coming out of that banking crisis in 2008 with the downturn economy. And 2010 is when I started the business. But he said, you will only be limited by your ability to manage people. And I didn't realize what a profound statement that was going to become for me, because he had referenced a business where the guy he grew the business and it was operating fantastic. And he had like 50 employees, but then he went to really expand it. And while he was good at managing 50 employees, he wasn't so good at managing 150 employees. And then that just kind of can tank everything. And the thing is that when I started my business, I believe in team. I believe in people, because I don't believe that you'll ever get anywhere in life singularly. Everything is about the people you surround yourself with. And team was at the very core founding principle of my company. And that has just been everything. As a matter of fact, we just got back an employee survey today, and everybody they had really great faith in the leadership of the business, and they felt that team environment. And so I'm really happy because, I'm at 80 employees, which means I beat his his initial, 50 employees. Like maybe that's all you're capable of, which has been such a great thing for me. Finding, to me, this whole thing has been a journey. It's been learning, and I'm a court reporter who went to school for court reporting. And while I did have some exposure to my grandmother being a business owner, it wasn't, that was, the 1970s. It was a very different dynamic. But yeah, there's so much I've had to learn along the way. I did get just by happenstance, somebody came into my life not long before I opened my business. He's a venture capitalist. He's never invested in my business, but he's a very influential guy, very, very smart. And he took me under his wing. And that's something else I would strongly advise people, is to always be very open-minded. Now, I don't know if I'm just an open-minded person, period, or if I'm willing to underestimate myself at all times, because I don't have an MBA. And I believe that we're always learning. And so I'm very open and receptive to evolving as a person and learning and growing. And that's why he's spent so much time with me. And he taught me about things that I had no idea about. I remember him first talking to me about onboarding and about brand and about culture. Those 3 words were something he taught me at the very, very beginning. And when he first was saying them to me, I had no idea now, 10 years later, how it would be at the core of everything. Because onboarding, acquiring 13 companies and onboarding their employees, onboarding their clients, not losing that business is absolutely something that you have to get right to perfection, which is why I've spent a lot of time acquiring companies, because I've been perfecting that onboarding process and perfecting the brand. He helped me, the brand, aligning every single thing that we do with what my brand is. So I have a whole framework of what my brand means. And it goes right down to every graphic, every image, fonts, the way we communicate, everything aligns with the brand. And that's like my bright line. So there's all these little concepts that, I will admit, there was a time a few years in, especially, I was growing so fast. And when you grow fast like that, not only was I new to business, basically, but you have to figure out how to grow your infrastructure. You have to be predictive, because you've got to be in front of the growth, because the minute that you're behind it, then things start to break down and you get cracks in your framework, and that's no good for anybody. And so I felt at times, I remember calling him from the airport one time, practically in tears, saying, "What am I doing? I don't have an MBA." He was like, he recently said to me, he's like, his name is Herb Martens. He says, "You've got the Herb Martens MBA. You don't need this Harvard class." They have some of those little, go to CEO school, and learn these things. He's like, "You don't need that. You already know it." Because, truthfully, there are some things that you can't learn from a book, how to interact with people, how to be a leader. And, and not that I was really taught those things either. They did kind of come naturally to me, which is, it's a whole other conversation about team and, things you learned as a kid. And anyway.
Well,
But
I
that's how it all
want to go
began.
over, I'm sorry. I know that you've won a lot of awards, and I think I have to read them because there's a lot. So, including Woman of Outstanding Leadership by the International Women's Leadership Association, Most Enterprising Women of the Year by Enterprising Women Magazine, South Florida District Small Business Woman Owned Person of the Year. Which one of your accolades means the most to you?
The one that means the most is the Most Enterprising Woman of the Year. That one, because that was the first big award I won for being a business owner. And it was because it recognized women. And women is something that that obviously means a lot to me, but it's something I really want to support. Even after I'm finished with my leadership with NCRA, I plan to do more things that involve women, because I do want to see women in leadership positions throughout our country. I want to see women in leadership positions at all kinds of board tables and all kinds of, great Fortune 100, 500 companies. I want to see women start their own businesses. I want to see diversity. I want to see clear representation that really represents, what America is, right? If it's 50% women, then I want to see 50% women at every single table. So that really meant a lot to me. And that award, it wasn't just based on performance financially. It was also based on a story of starting a business in a downturn economy. There were some adverse circumstances when I started the business that were, pretty tough at the time, but there were all kinds of lessons that I learned. It was, I was fighting with a huge corporation that was, trying to crush me. But, so there were things that I had to learn, like, takes a bigger person to walk away, focusing on what I can control and what I could change, and focusing, tuning out noise. If I couldn't control it or change it, if it didn't move the ball down the field, basically, then I had to tune it out. And you need that incredible focus in business. It was, God, there was just so much I learned from that. A lawyer told me, um, he said, Christine, you need to sit down and watch The Godfather over and over again. He said, because you are a sheep playing in a game of wolves. And I learned, he said I needed to learn to have thicker skin. And I did. It was true. And this whole thing really taught me all those things. And actually, I ended up being so grateful, even though it was a tough thing to go through. I ended up being so grateful for it because it made me into the business person that I needed to be. So now I'm basically a formidable opponent because I couldn't be beat. And so that makes me pretty fearless now, because what else you got to throw at me? I'm good. So yeah, so that meant a lot to me because it was about the story and about everything that I had come through. And it was kind of like an award for coming through it. So that one really means the most to me.
That's a wonderful story. You attribute a lot of your success to creating the right team of people. So, what advice would you give to other business leaders that are trying to build strong teams?
So, at the beginning, when I first started, I said that I had actually come from a corporation that they didn't value. I felt they didn't value people, and I felt like they ran from a position of negativity. And I don't think negatively. I think positively all the time. The glass for me is always half full. Even all of those really hard things I went through as a kid. I mean, even being homeless and still having to go to school. I was never ever a victim of any of it. It was because I believe that in accountability, and I'm still responsible for my own life, and we still have it better than all of these other people. So, people in third world countries, and there's always a way to look at something and you're doing good no matter what it is. And I don't care if you're living under a sheet, you're breathing, you maybe got food. So when I started the business, I said no negativity. And I said from the outset, if you have $1 million worth of book of business and you're a negative person, you're not coming in this firm. And I've held true to that to this day. So much so that if we happen to make a hire that ends up not being the right one, and they start to demonstrate signs of negativity or conflict, they really kind of almost just end up going away. They don't work out very quickly because they so clearly don't fit into our culture that it just doesn't work out. So so you got to hold true. You got to figure out at the outset, what are those things that you value and what do you want to be about? So for me, the company was never, ever about making money, actually. And I know that sounds weird, but for me, it was always about building something really great. I care about reputation, integrity, and things like that. To me, those are the things that are going to help me, put my head down on a pillow at night and sleep soundly. Not dollars. And to me, having had nothing, I can go back to nothing at any time because I would never trade money in for integrity or reputation or, who I am. So, right, that's all we're going to take to the grave with us. So I valued people, and those things I figured those were my bright line. And it's those core things that guided me all the way. So how I treat people how I would expect to be treated. You have to be able to have critical conversations, even though they're tough sometimes. And you're going to tell somebody maybe something that they don't want to hear. I can tell you that the more critical conversations that I've had, the more respect I've actually have gained. Even though they were tough to have and they didn't want to hear them, they respected me because they know that when I say something, I'm honest about it. good, bad, or indifferent. And at the end of the day, people ultimately appreciate that. So I never, ever, I just won't, I won't even tell a scintilla of, a lie or untruth or shy away from a conversation, because the minute people see that, if they ever see it, it becomes this little ripple in a lake, and then it just starts to grow, and you can never get that back once it runs wildly out of control. You can never stop the lake and return it to flat again, I don't think. But so those, I guess it's the principles about who I am as a person that I've just carried through in my company. I built a company that I wanted to work for myself. I actually feel like I work for it, just like everybody else does. I'm sure I put in as many hours as most of them.
I'm
But
sure. I tell you, being a businesswoman is not for the faint of heart. There is a lot of work and heavy lift that takes place, and a lot of worrying
totally,
and brain power.
it's so true. It's so
That you're
true.
thinking about it all the time. So, what is next for you and your company?
What is next? Well, I want to keep on growing. So, my concept was to grow a company as big as I possibly could. So, I don't know what my limits are yet. I don't know if they exist, but still keep it as a mom and pop feel. So, like if you go to my website, my cell phone number is on there, my partner's cell phone number is on there, and you can still reach us. So we just want to be, we still care about people before profits, that feel that me and can do business with me and my partner. But I just want to keep on growing. So there's no limits yet.
I love that. We
Yeah.
like to end our show with a little bit of fun by asking all of our guests the same 7 questions. What would people be surprised to know about you?
Oh, they would be surprised to know that I am about to compete in a bodybuilding competition.
Are you serious? Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
And
my
you know
face
what?
is looking pretty thin right now.
You
I'm almost 3
you
weeks out.
you are an I've had another guest on that was a bodybuilder competitor. So I love this. This is our
Really?
first season. Tonight is going to end our first season of the Floridaville with you. So thank you for being that guest. And I love that you are going to participate in a bodybuilding competition. I love that.
Yeah. We're
So
gonna put a
when
new
you
face on Rosie the Riveter.
when you have guests in town, where is your favorite place to take them?
The Breakers. The Breakers in Palm Beach. That just says it all. It says it all for Palm Beach, old Florida. Yeah, it's gorgeous if you've never been in there. It's absolutely stunning. So it's impressive.
What is the name of a book you recently read that you could not put down, or the name of a show you enjoyed binge watching?
Oh my gosh. I hardly read. I have to tell you, all these years of reading transcripts, I just if I'm not getting paid to read, I'm not reading. Um, oh my gosh, and I'm totally blanking on the show. The one that takes place in Scotland's on Netflix.
Oh, The
Outlander?
Outlander. The
Yeah, Outlander.
Outlander.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Yeah,
great
I still want to
show.
go to Scotland now.
Yes, great show. Great
Yeah.
show. So, among your close family and friends, what are you best known for?
Um, I guess dog with a bone. That's probably what I'm known for. That I'm relentless pursuit of anything, and that I can't be stopped. That's probably what I'm known for.
If you have a nickname, who gave it to you?
Well, I was being called Khaleesi during the whole Game of Thrones era until she burned the city down at the very end and became this mass murderer. I had such a thing going because she was great leader. It was, Christine, Mother of Dragons. And I was calling, the salespeople were my dragons. And I was telling to bring me fresh meat. We had this whole thing going.
If you knew you could not fail, what would you attempt?
Mm. Well, I'm not sure. I don't know that I can fail at anything. And I tempt everything I want to do. So I don't have an answer for that.
That is a positive attitude right there. I love it. So, what are the top three things you love about living in Florida?
Top three. Well, the weather for sure. I tell you, I get all these people that are asking for, to come down to Florida and work. Like, how do you people live in the snow? I just don't get it. So that's number one. Gosh, I mean, I'm from Florida, so I'm a second generation. I know Florida like the back of my hand. I guess the other thing that I mean, not only is my family is here and everybody's here, and I love being connected. The other thing I love about Florida is I love that each area is so different. So if you go up to Panama City, Pensacola, Tallahassee, I mean, it's like Southern Alabama. It's totally different dialects up there. They have a Southern accent. But then, you could go down to the Keys, and I mean, that's a totally different lifestyle. And I mean, you can go over to Naples, and it's very elegant and classy over there. The beaches are absolutely gorgeous. And then you could be in Fort Lauderdale, Miami. It's eclectic. It's like a melting pot. To me, when I work down in Miami, I feel like I'm walking the streets of New York. Like when I'm at the courthouse, and you're like going down to there's a restaurant that's just close by. I think it might have closed down, but you'd see everybody on the streets and saying hello. And so it's just I like the diversity that you could just not go very far and just live in a completely different world. Like
I think
Disney
that's
World.
exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and it's been wonderful getting to know you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you giving me a platform and promoting women, and it's wonderful to see. Thank you.
Thanks. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast on all your favorite podcasting listening platforms. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at The Floridaville. And visit our website to see some extras regarding this episode. Our audio editor for this podcast episode is Joy Tootle with Rocket Ship Consultants. Our podcast has a wonderfully loyal audience. So if you have a business you might want to consider sponsoring our show. For more information about sponsorships, you can contact me. My email address is rosanna@rocketshipconsultants.com. Thanks so much for tuning in.